Before we begin, let me start by saying this is not clickbait. What I'm about to share is truly revolutionary. Sometimes, the simplest things can spark the change you've been searching for your entire life. That's exactly what I've found with this process. Now, the first thing is, this is not a secret. It's not complicated. It's something completely within your control. I always say, control the controllables, and this is one of those things we can all take charge of. Second, this idea was inspired by none other than the legendary Bob Proctor from an interview he did years ago that left a lasting impression. But that's not all. There are a few other incredible minds behind this concept, and I'll be revealing their insights throughout the video. Now, while Bob didn't invent this ideal, he certainly revolutionized the way we think, and that plays a massive role in the state we find ourselves in. Let's take a moment for a quick self-test. Where do you currently stand in life? Are you successful, or are you struggling? Do you have financial independence, or are you just getting by? Now let's ask the big question. If you're not successful or financially independent, do you want to be? Now imagine this. What if I told you that financial independence is within your reach, and you don't need to sign up for a class, buy a course, attend seminars, or watch endless YouTube videos promising success only to hit you with a sales pitch at the end? This is something you can start right now, simply by watching this video all the way through. To make things simpler, I've divided this video into chapters, so you can follow along and fully understand the process of unlocking your success. Here's the key question I'll ask you. Do you know who you are? Most of you will probably say, yes, of course I know who I am. But I can assure you that many of us don't truly know who we are. That lack of self-awareness is often the biggest block standing between us and the life we envision. This video will help remove that block. By the end, you'll feel inspired to pursue the life you've always dreamed of, whether that means being financially free, achieving success, traveling with your family, or simply living life fully instead of just surviving. And this isn't just for you. It's something you can pass down to your kids, ensuring they don't get stuck in the same loop so many of us have been trapped in. If you're ready to start making real changes in your life, stay tuned. Subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so you can continue being inspired to build a better you. Let's start this journey together. Your transformation begins now. Chapter 1. Getting to know yourself. The first thing I used to do is to attend seminars. A lot of seminars which never work the way we want it to. I'm sure most of us have done that at least once before. And did your situation change? Instead of going to seminars to get rich quickly or to be super successful, I went to seminars to learn more about myself. What I've also learned is that people attend seminars, especially self-development seminars, to look for the answer. They want to know, what is it out there I can learn so that I can be more successful, right? I think that's what most people are looking for. I think we're looking for an answer outside of ourselves, and guess what? We're never going to find it, and here's why. The answer is not on the outside, it's inside in all of us, but it's undiscovered. Let's go deeper. I met a man here in Toronto. He was one that originally got me involved in studying this, Ray Stanford, and he told me if I didn't like the results I was getting in my life, that I was going to have to change me because they were my results. And he said, if you're going to change you, you're going to have to find out something about yourself. And that made a lot of sense. I don't think it was an earth-shattering idea. It wouldn't give anybody a brain hernia, but it made a hell of a lot of sense to me. So, I started to study myself. I found most people don't know who they are. We really don't know. Chapter 2. Who you are. What do I mean when I say people don't know who they are? Let's start with me, for instance. I know my name, I know my age, I know where I live. But guess what? That's not me. That's not who I am. If you ask the average person who they are, they'll give you their name. They'll say, I'm Frank Peterson or I'm Chloe Vanderhake, but that's not you. Frank and Peterson are two words. Your parents give them to you. They're called names, but it's not you. So you're going to say, well, this is me, but it's not. It's your body. Like you never called out of work and say, body won't be in today. It's sick, right? We don't say hand or leg. It's my hand, my leg, my body, my name. Who am I? Well, that's an interesting question. And I believe if a person will start to study that and look for the answer, they'll find it. I think we live simultaneously on three planes of understanding. We're spiritual creatures, we have an intellect, and we live in physical bodies. But because we lack awareness or understanding of who we are, we're totally locked into a physical world. And we let things outside of us control us. 95% of the population are reacting to life. They're not really living at all. Chapter 3: The Two Barriers of Success. One of the barriers to success is lacking awareness. There's no question about it. I believe that there's two barriers. Let's talk about success. Success is a very peculiar word. Let me explain. Nightingale had a great definition for it. He said a person is successful if they know where they are, and they know where they're going, and they're progressively moving in that direction. He said that success was the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. Anyone that has a goal and they're moving towards it, they're successful. Most people think that you're successful if you have a lot of money. Quite often, you have a lot of money if you're successful, but it isn't. Now let's think for a minute. Would you say Mother Teresa has a lot of money? No? But she's a pretty successful lady. Success without money. The other barrier is our conditioning. The conditioning that takes place in our subconscious mind from the time we're infants. All we can do is act and talk like the people around us. That's why we learn the language we learn. If there were 10 languages spoken in your home, you'd learn 10 languages without any trouble, right? However, in reality, there's usually one language, and that's the only one we ever learn. And we grow older, and we think, well, I couldn't learn another language. We could learn 100 if we wanted to. You can do anything, but I think we're conditioned. We have a real strong conditioning, usually with not very good ideas. And then that's the barrier that's inside us. The one that's outside of us is our environment. We have a tendency to act like everybody around us. And if you think about this, it does make a lot of sense. Because if you study statistics, 95% of the people live their entire life and never live the way they want to live. You know that 95% of the population in most countries, let's say in North America, the richest continent in the history of the world, they'll work productively, let's say for 40 of their 65 years, and they'll end up with hardly any money. There's got to be something wrong. So 5% of the people end up financially comfortable or independent. Now, when I say this, I'm not trying to depress anyone. I just think it's quite interesting and worth knowing. Let's continue. Chapter 4: Anyone can win. The idea behind this is that anybody can win, anyone at all. But if we start studying these statistics, I think we'll arrive at the conclusion, which is, I better start thinking for myself rather than follow everyone. With most people, they get a job, they look around, they see how everybody else is doing their work, and they start doing it the same way. Let's stop and think. I wonder if any of these people know what they're doing. Is there a better way to do it? Don't we have a need to fit in? I mean, we don't want to stand out. We don't want to get fired. We don't want to make waves. Just fall into line, take a number, be like everybody around. That'd be great in the animal kingdom, but human beings aren't supposed to live that way. I think we should make a few waves. We should maybe stand out, be different, not for the sake of being different, but because we are different. We all think different thoughts, and I believe we should start to think and build images in our mind of what we'd like to do, and then set out and do it. Emerson did that. Edison did that. Marconi did that. Samuel Morse did that. Buckminster Fuller did that. We could go on and on and on. They were different. They stood out. They made a few waves. Remember, I started out with self-searching, trying to find out more about myself. And I can say that I'm more successful than I was before. However, at the start, I wondered a lot of money. I figured if I had enough money, I was going to cure all my problems. I found that that wasn't true. I earned a fair amount of money, and I seemed to have more problems. But after working and studying, and I did this for a few years, I discovered that the real answer is to get to know yourself a little better. And I don't think you have to go off into the Himalayas and become a guru to do that. Now you may ask, what did I do to learn about myself? I went around to as many seminars as I could. Luckily, I can provide the details here, so you don't have to go to all those seminars. Chapter 5: The Answer is in the Mind. I attended seminars. I went and listened to different speakers who taught something about the mind. I think the answer is in our mind. If we study it and try to understand our mind, we can find the answers. Okay, let's take it back. What did I learn about myself during that study? Well, I learned that the biggest part of me you'll never see, it's non-physical. And when you see me, you see the physical body is nothing but the physical manifestation of the higher side of my personality. And of course, that's true even with you watching this video. It's true of everyone. What should you study? How does this non-physical part of your mind work? What happens when you think? Where do thoughts come from? How was your phone built? Somebody had to think, right? Thoughts are everywhere. And we pull thoughts into our mind, and we build pictures or images in our mind. What we want to understand is that's a non-physical side of ourself. That's what's doing that. If I can build an image of something in my mind, I'm quite capable of building a physical replica of it in my world. So, if I build an image of me as a happy, relaxed person, I can live like that. If you build an image of yourself as being prosperous, you can become prosperous. So, if we think rich, we will be rich. Now here's the thing. We're already rich, just short of money. Those of us that like to acquire more money and/or happiness, or whatever we see as success, those of us that want to reach the goals that we've set for ourselves, we do it first by sitting down and decide what we really want. If it's money you want, how much money? Lots of money, right? But here's the thing, nobody knows how much lots is exactly. So you've got to be specific. You got to write down on a card or a piece of paper exactly what you want. And you carry that card or paper around and read it often, like every day. Now, this is what I learned in this book called Think and Grow Rich, and it's a major part of my life. It embodies what success is. I can teach you how to set goals, but you have to decide exactly what you want. Before we continue into Chapter 6, I've got a quick question for you. Have you subscribed to the channel yet? If not, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss content like this. And hey, if you're enjoying this series, give it a thumbs up. It really helps us grow and reach more people like you who are on this incredible path. Without further ado, let's jump into Chapter 6 and explore more about uncovering the real you. Chapter 6. The Negative Enemy. So now you're thinking about your success. And guess what? You're going to also have thoughts come to your mind of why you can't achieve that success. Now you're going to have to build a strong defense in your mind. You're going to have to work on the ability in your conscious mind to reject that negative idea. I call it the negative enemy. You're going to have to kick that thought out of your mind. Thinking of why you can't do something is never going to do you any good. So, you're going to keep thinking, don't stop thinking, until you start to think of thoughts of how you can do it, how you can achieve your goals. Now these thoughts come to you in the form of images in our mind. Think of how you can and not why you can't. Your first step is to set goals. Think about how you can go about reaching those goals exactly. And just think of how you can, not how you can't. Now, I'd say before you get into that, you should get a good book and start to study it. My personal best is Think and Grow Rich. Then select a person who is already doing something that you'd like to do. Get to know that person. Go to the experts for advice. Don't ask the person next door, your mother, father, brother, the guy that works beside you. Because they don't necessarily know. There's no point in asking a person how to earn a lot of money if they're only earning $10,000 a year. They don't know. Ask yourself this. Would you go to a sick doctor if you wanted to get healthy? No, right? Find someone that you can go to for advice. Get a real good book and lock into that book and start to study it. Again, my personal best book looks like a Bible. It's by Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. I've been reading this book for 23 years. I'll probably read it for another 23 years. I got another good book. It's called The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. The author Dr. Joseph Murphy is no longer among the living, but Dr. Murphy wrote this book, The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. And that's probably one of the best books that you're ever going to find because you're going to learn something about your mind when you read this book. I read a lot of books. I've got probably 1,000 books sitting in my den at home in my library, but the one that I carry everywhere I go, and I read it all the time, is Think and Grow Rich. I never stop reading it. Chapter 7. What wasn't there before? Now, where's the value for you to reread these books again? I mean, you would think that I know it well enough that I think I could probably recite it verbatim. But the secret is, I once read in a book where it said, When you read a good book through the second time, you don't see something in it that you didn't see before. You see something in yourself that wasn't there before. You see, when I read The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, I create a greater awareness. Let me read 2 lines for you. Hill said, "The missing link in all systems of education known to civilization today may be found in the failure of educational institutions to teach students how to organize and use knowledge after they acquire it." He went on to say that we should understand the real meaning of the word educate. Now it's not going to a brick-and-mortar edifice for 25 years. That's gathering information. You'll probably develop your memory, but I would question how well you develop your mind. And I'm not against education because I encourage my children to go to school, as we all do. But let's go a bit deeper now. Hill said the word education comes from the word educo, and he says it's derived from the Latin word educo, meaning to induce, to draw out, or to develop from within. An educated person is not necessarily one who has an abundance of general or specialized knowledge. An educated person is one who has so developed the faculties of their mind that they may acquire anything they want, or its equivalent, without violating the rights of others. An educated person is the one that knows how to go and get what they want out of life without being selfish. In the sense of a researcher, somebody who knows what they're looking for and knows how to go about finding it. Well, I think we should forever be involved in research because learning is a lifelong process. Here's the thing, you never stop learning. Education means to draw from within. We're drawing on an infinite source. We've got deep reservoirs of talent and ability within us. We can learn to do anything. We have phenomenal powers just bursting out of us, all of us. If we used our bodies like we use our minds, we'd probably just move our little finger. We don't exercise our mind enough. Why is that? Because we're not taught to. Chapter 8. The Bob Proctor Simulation. Now this is very interesting. I believe that kids in school should be taught before the school year ever starts. Kids should sit down, they should be given a blank report card, and we should get them to visualize the marks they want to get and write their own report cards. This should be done the first week in school. And then the teacher should say, I want you just concentrate on how to get those grades, and I don't want you to think of why you can't. And I want you to form the attitude that you're going to get it. Now, I know some of you might think, well, that's just not being realistic. However, that's being very realistic. That's following the success principles that go back 6,000 years in recorded history. That's how everything was accomplished. That's not engaging in fantasy thinking or in daydreaming. That's where all greatness comes from. Greatness comes from fantasy. Let's take it back. Imagine that when Edison first saw the light bulb, he was fantasizing. But he kept fantasizing, and he built it into a theory, and then he built it into an image, and then he built it into a fact. I mean, when I was a kid, it was a fantasy to think of going to the moon. We've been up there with cars, playing golf. This is the terms of success principles, having the right attitude. It takes in the way you think, the way you feel, and the way you act. Explaining attitude in a conversation can be very difficult. Usually, it would take on average about 3 hours explaining attitude. So to do it here in 3 minutes is very complex. However, let me summarize it for you. I recognize that you and me, we have a winning attitude. In human relations, we talk about the toughest thing with managing people. The toughest thing to deal with is their attitude. That's almost impossible to change another person. That's the one thing where companies' management falls down. They can't change people's attitudes. Nobody can change another person's attitude. The only attitude we can change is our own. But if management has the idea, it's their attitude, and we can't do anything about it, then they're not going to do anything about it. But if management arrive at the conclusion, yes, it is attitude, and let's teach the staff something about attitude. Let's teach them something about themselves. Let's make them realize that they're worth something, that they're valuable, that they're the greatest resource we've got. Did you know that companies spend about 65% of every dollar that comes in goes back out on employees and wages and benefits, and yet management knows less about employees than anything else? They know more about the gadgets and the widgets than they do about their staff. So, to win, we have to develop a winning attitude. Let's define that. First of all, what is a winning attitude? Well, let's digress for a second. The whole universe operates by laws, and there's a law of opposites. It's called the law of polarity, everything has its opposite. There's a right and a left side. There's a front and a back, an up and a down, a hot and a cold, positive and negative, yin and yang. You can think negative or you can think positive, but you can't think both at the same time. You're only going to think one way at one time, and you have to train the mind to think or look for the positive or the good in things. There's good in everything. There's no such thing as no good. Let me explain. Your car broke down on your way to work. There's something good about it. Now, you may have to look to find out what it is, but there's something good in everything. There has to be a positive and a negative for anything to exist. There's a law of gender that decrees that. Science understands it. It's taught in science. Once you understand that there's this law of opposites, there's negative thoughts or positive thoughts. As the thought energy flows into our mind, we decide what we're going to think. A person is out of work. They can decide to think, I can't find a job, but they can decide to think I can. If they're thinking, I'm going to find one, then you'll start attracting that train of thought, figuring out how to find that job. To do this, you really have to understand how your conscious and your subconscious mind works in relation to your body or your physical world to understand attitude. Attitude should be taught as a subject in school ahead of reading, writing, arithmetic, or anything else, because it's a person's attitude that's going to determine the marks they get. Let's go back to the success principles. We talked about you having a winning attitude. You've got to set a goals. Then you have to work on self-image. Now, when we think we build images in our mind, Dr. Maxwell Maltz discovered the self-image concept as we know it today. Chapter 9. Dr. Maltz Self-Image Theory. In 1960, Dr. Maltz was a plastic surgeon, and he realized he was operating on people. He may have removed a nasty scar from their face, and he noticed sometimes when he removed the scar, or maybe did a nose job on them or something, there was a great psychological change that took place in that person. Where they may have been introverted, they started to become very gregarious and outgoing. And he postulated that there must be two images that we have, an exterior image, and we also have an inner self-image. And he started to study this, and he wrote a magnificent book on it called Psycho-Cybernetics. And psycho-cybernetics, psycho being the mind, cybernetics being the science of control and communication. And in this book, Dr. Maltz explains how every one of us has an image in our mind of ourself, and it's called a self-image. Too many people don't know much about themselves, and so they don't have a very good image of themselves. And you'll often notice that people will shy away from you. They won't look you in the eye. They'll look down or look up. They'll never try to do anything of any great consequence because they don't think they can. They have a poor self-image. Part of that is because, through school, we're told that we're not doing well in class. Or in these areas, we failed this subject, we had low grades, you only got 60% in math. I believe that could be part of why we are like that in our adulthood. Let's talk about the IQ test. There's been a great disservice done with the IQ test when we're going through school. Let me explain. There was a very famous Frenchman called Alfred Binet. Back around the turn of the century, Binet invented the IQ test, and then we brought it over from Stanford over to the US. We started to test a person's intellect, and then we'll brand them good, bad, smart, or not. And that's not true. We can change IQs by changing self-images. But yes, if we're told we're not very good, you're just like your dad, you're a bum, you're never going to do well, you didn't go to school, you can't win. That's all false. We can do anything, and we should be encouraging our children, not discouraging. Give them a pat on the back rather than a kick. Now I'm sure you're asking at this point, well, what can I do? Because we all walk around with some degree of a self-image. And yes, we all do have a self-image, and you can have a negative self-image to some degree. However, we can all improve on self-images. No matter how good or perfect your image is, you can improve on it. Chapter 10. How to improve your self-image. The question is, how can we go about making our self-image more positive? This might be a little bit complex to explain here. However, let me give you this simple tip without the complexity. If you would sit down and let your body relax, totally relax, now start to visualize in your mind. See yourself the way you want to see yourself. Now, this may take a good deal of thought in the terms of how we want to see ourselves. Better yet, maybe we don't know how we want to see ourselves. Let's relate it to something specific then. Maybe somebody you admire, Somewhere we'd like to see yourself down the road? See how you'd like to live your life. See yourself living it exactly that way. Now, understand that that's a picture in your mind. When you pick up a book, the book is nothing but a picture that an author has painted in words. Let's look at Van Gogh, the great artist. Van Gogh was asked how he did such beautiful work. He said, "I dream my painting, and then I paint my dream." What that means is that he got the picture from the mind and then painted on the canvas. So again, let's build that image, relax, and build the image in your mind of how we'd like to see yourself. You can pause the video if you have to. How would you like to see yourself acting in life, relating to other people, your social life? See yourself in the position you hold or how you do your job no matter what it is, and then take that picture and describe it. Write it out in the present tense. I am so happy now that I see myself like this. Now, a lot of people will laugh at this ideal and say it doesn't make any sense, but it does make a lot of sense. And ask yourself this, why doesn't it make sense? Can't come up with an answer, right? No one can tell you why it doesn't make sense. I could spend hours telling you why it does, and I could explain it in such detail that everyone would understand it. However, for right now, write out a description of how you'd like to see yourself. Start to read it and read it and read it and read it every day. Carry it around and keep reading it. The one point that all the great teachers all down through history have all agreed on, they've been in complete unanimous agreement on it, we become what we think about. Now, it may be fantasy at first. It might even appear to us as being a lie, but if you read it often enough, you'll start to believe it. And when the great William James said, "Believe, and your belief will create the fact," you will see your personality change. Chapter 11. Thoughts control our feelings. I've watched people in seminars, their personality changed right in front of my eyes, and all they're doing is starting to see themselves differently, starting to think different thoughts. So does that mean that our thoughts control our actions? No, our thoughts control our feelings. Our feelings control our actions, and we control our thoughts. I'm sure everyone has controlled their thoughts before, however, generally speaking, one of our difficulties is that we tend to react to what other people tell us, and we consequently get the negative thoughts, and then that affects our feelings, and then that affects our behavior. Let me explain. You read the newspaper, it says, "Doom and gloom's coming," and guess what? You just accept it. Doom and gloom don't have to be coming. Do you know there's always been a depression for some people? We're programmed since growing up with the idea that everybody went broke in the 30s. They didn't. Some made millions. Everybody went out of business. They didn't. Some people went into business. There's always a depression for some people, and there's always good times for others. Let's ask ourselves, when we read something in the paper, do I want to get emotionally involved in that idea? If it's a negative idea, I choose to not get emotionally involved with it. I don't read the paper that often, but when I do, I don't dwell on it. We shouldn't allow ourselves to get emotionally involved when we see other negative ideas, when an idea comes into your mind. Whether somebody else tells you, or whether you read it in the paper, we should reason with it. Ask ourselves, will that idea help me get to where I want to go? If it won't, reject the idea. In closing, have you ever stopped and asked yourself, who am I? What do I truly want in life? Most of us go through life on autopilot, chasing goals that society sets for us, without ever questioning if they align with who we are inside. But here's the truth. If you don't know who you are, you'll never live up to your full potential. I've been there too, confused, stuck, and unsure of my direction. I kept thinking I had to do what everyone else was doing to feel successful, but I realized I wasn't being authentic. And that realization changed everything. Self-discovery is the foundation for growth. It's how you uncover what truly drives you. It's how you find out what you're capable of. And when you figure that out, life becomes limitless. But it's not easy. It takes effort. It takes honesty. And it takes stepping outside of your comfort zone. You have to reflect on your passions, face your fears, and embrace your uniqueness. Only then can you unlock the version of yourself that's ready to take on the world. So here's my challenge to you. Start today. Start small. Write down your thoughts, explore your passions, and ask yourself the hard questions. Who do you want to be? What's been holding you back? And how will you move forward? Because the truth is, The life you've always dreamed of? The success, the growth, the happiness? It starts with knowing yourself. You have everything you need inside of you. So take that first step and make the commitment to discover who you really are. Now it's your turn. I'm challenging you to dive deep, make those changes, and unlock your true potential. The world is waiting for the best version of you, and I can't wait to see what you create. I hope you found this video insightful and inspiring. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if it resonated with you. Let's continue exploring new ways to uncover our true selves and unlock our full potential. See you in the next video.